Anti-government protesters on the march in Bahrain streaming back into the main square of the nation's capital just one day after security forces there engaged in a violent crackdown. But Bahrain isn't the only hotspot flaring up in the region. We've also seen unrest in Libya, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Algeria, and Iran. It's a radically different Middle East situation going on right now. At least that's what appears to be happening on the horizon. And if so, how could it affect those of us living here in the United States? Joining us now is national security expert Mike Barrett, former senior analyst for chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Mike, thanks for being with us today. You know, when you see the situation not only going on in the Middle East, but also northern Africa, and even the tiny country of Gabon, which is only like 1.5 million people there, but yet there's uprisings there. What's going on? What's at the root cause of these unrest that we're seeing unfold in the Arab world?
Well, it's really interesting. I think there's at least two levels of activity going on. The primary one is that each individual country has its own protests going on for its own reasons. So, for example, in Bahrain, the population is, there's a religious divide and there's a lack of freedom and lack of democracy, and so there's a frustration there. In Libya, I think it's actually more similar to what we saw in Egypt, where you just frankly had a out-of-touch, corrupt regime, and that the economics and the sort of social opportunities in that country are very limited. So each individual country has its own reasons for the situation that they're in. But then you step back and you look at the regional implications, and you start seeing that Iran is making power plays, that Syria is feeling emboldened, and frankly that a region that respects power has come to see that the strong men who are in charge of these countries are maybe not all powerful. And so you've got a lot of different factors all coming together at once.
You said a mouthful right there, because the strong man in those regions, the strong men appear to be falling, or at least faltering in their leadership and their ability to hold and tamp down any kind of flare-ups of terrorists, if you will, or any kind of flare-ups of uprisings. And now that we're seeing that unfold, what should be our chief concern here in the United States?
Well, I think there's two major problems, right? So one is that places such as Yemen, if that goes the wrong way, that becomes an easy base for al-Qaeda. Same thing with a place like Libya. Ungoverned spaces, as we've seen in Somalia, for example, create an opportunity for terrorists to train and to recruit and to be active, and then to come and affect U.S. Directly on our own soil, or certainly U.S. interests globally. And so those are major, major concerns. But again, I think you have to also step beyond the terrorism and say U.S. has tremendous interest in that region. Obviously, oil is a major region. And the fact that the Fifth Fleet is headquartered in Bahrain creates a substantial risk in terms of our presence, our naval presence in the Persian Gulf. So if anything happens to the regime there and we end up not being able to base our ships out of there, then we are actually going to be substantially less strong when it comes to naval presence in the Persian Gulf.
Well, yeah, you bring up a very good point, because on the ground we're present there because of the Fifth Fleet, but the Fifth Fleet has also stated, or at least a former admiral who represented the Fifth Fleet stated that the Navy could easily function on those ships. But we lose human intelligence if we leave the ground, if we have no boots on the ground. Having said all this, what should be our response to what's going on with the unrest there?
Yes, well, I think that there's really not a lot we can do overtly, because unfortunately the region sees us through very suspicious eyes. And so we have to be very careful not to provoke broader conflict. There's a lot of things you can do diplomatically behind the scenes, where you're talking to allies and you're sending messages. And frankly, I think it's time to be carrying out some covert activities against our particular challenging regimes such as Iran, so that we're rattling their cages a little bit and letting them know that we still have ways of influencing events, even if we're not going to do things overtly.
Mike Barrett, very good point, and thank you for your perspective. Former national security expert Mike Barrett joining us today with details about what's happening in the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.